Here is something most people never hear. Alzheimer's disease doesn't begin on the day someone forgets a loved one's face. It begins 10, even 20 years earlier, quietly, with no symptoms at all, while you feel completely fine. And here's the part that actually changes things. 20 years of brain research has settled one question for good. Your brain can be trained at any age. That isn't a motivational slogan. That's plain physiology. So at the end of this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 simple exercises. Do all of them cleanly on your first try, and your brain is in great shape. Struggle with a few of them? That is not bad news. It's just your brain telling you it could use a little training, and those same 7 exercises are exactly how you give it that training. Stay with me because first I want to show you what's actually happening inside your head. When you understand why this works, you do the exercises right, and that's when they start to pay off. If you want clear, honest health information, hit subscribe and leave a like. It helps more people find this channel, and we're aiming for 300, and the QR code is on your screen right now. So let's talk about what's really going on. As the years add up, thinking gets a little harder for everyone, no exceptions. It doesn't matter how mentally active you've been your whole life. For some people, it stays small, misplaced keys, mixing up the grandkids' names. For others, it turns into something serious, a real drop-in. Quality of life, leaning more and more on the people around them, and in some cases it even shortens life, and underneath all of it's one specific chemical process. Here's how that process starts. When you're under constant stress, when you're short on sleep night after night, when there's ongoing inflammation simmering in the body, your cells start producing more of something called free radicals. A free radical is just an unstable molecule that's missing an electron, and because it's missing one, it goes hunting. It rips into healthy cells and damages them from the inside, trying to grab the electron it lacks. Your neurons, the cells that make up your brain, are especially exposed to this. The brain is an energy hog. Even though it makes up only a small fraction of your body weight, it burns through roughly a fifth of all the oxygen you take in. High oxygen use means a lot of chemical reactions running hot, and a lot of hot reactions means a lot of chances for something to get damaged. Researchers have a name for the buildup of all those free radicals. They call it oxidative stress, and the evidence points to oxidative stress as one of the central drivers behind Alzheimer's disease. Here's where it does its damage. Inside every neuron sit tiny structures called mitochondria. Think of them as the little power plants that make energy for the cell. Free radicals damage those power plants. When the power plants start failing, the neuron basically starves, and slowly, quietly, it begins to die. And this is the key thing to understand. All of this is happening long before anyone notices a single symptom. You can feel completely normal while the breakdown has already been going on for years. So when the tiredness shows up, when the brain fog rolls in, when you walk into a room and forget why you came in, that is not the start of this process. That's the middle of it. Now here's where a lot of people make their first move and where it quietly goes wrong. They start taking vitamin C or vitamin E, hoping to mop up those free radicals. And for the body as a whole, that's not a bad instinct. But for the brain specifically, most people feel no difference at all. There's a reason for that, and it's worth understanding. Between your bloodstream and your brain sits a kind of security checkpoint called the blood-brain barrier. It's a filtering system, and its whole job is to keep toxins, germs, and most foreign substances out of your brain. You want that barrier. It protects you, but it doesn't make exceptions for the good stuff either. It blocks most antioxidants too, antioxidants being the compounds that neutralize free radicals. So your vitamins go to work in your blood, they help the rest of your body, and then they hit that checkpoint, and most of them simply don't get through. The brain is left without much antioxidant backup. Clinicians hear a version of this constantly. Take someone like James. He reads up on his health, and he's been taking vitamin C and vitamin E faithfully for years because he heard they push back against aging. For his general health, those might well be doing something. But when he tells his doctor, he hasn't noticed one bit of difference. In his memory or his focus, he isn't imagining it. The antioxidants in those pills are doing their job in his bloodstream. They just can't cross that checkpoint and reach the brain tissue where he was hoping they'd help. It isn't that the vitamins are useless, it's that the brain plays by stricter rules. That's exactly why scientists have been hunting for compounds that can actually get past that barrier. One of the ones drawing attention is rosmarinic acid. It's a natural plant compound, a polyphenol found in rosemary, sage, mint, and a handful of other herbs. Research suggests it may help take the edge off anxiety and give a modest lift to how energetic people feel. And what makes it interesting to scientists is that it appears able to slip across the blood-brain barrier and do its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant work right there inside the nervous tissue where it's needed most. Another compound under study is superoxide dismutase. That's an enzyme your body actually makes on its own, and it's one of the most powerful natural antioxidants there is. A version of it that comes from melon extract has drawn interest because it appears to work right inside the cell in the exact spot where most of the damage is happening. And then there are flavonoids, yet another family of plant compounds, which seem to boost the effect of the first two and support the nervous system more broadly. These are all areas worth keeping an eye on as the research develops and worth asking your doctor about rather than reaching for on your own. But here's the catch. With all of these, antioxidants only protect what you already have. They put the brakes on the damage, they slow the breakdown, they don't build anything new, and if you want your brain to actually get better, not just hold steady, it needs something else entirely. It needs a workout. And this is where most people trip over the same mistake. They figure, I walk around, I talk to people, I cook, I run the household, surely my brain is getting plenty of exercise. But here's the problem. Anything you do out of habit, your brain runs on autopilot. Your brain wired those tasks a long time ago. It isn't building anything new. It's just replaying a program it already knows by heart. Picture a driver who's taken the same route to work for 15 years. They don't think about it anymore. They don't look for new roads. They just drive. That's your brain doing the dishes. There's a pattern that comes up in primary care more often than people realize. Someone like Linda, in her early 60s, sharp as ever, stays busy all day with errands, cooking, helping out with the grandkids. She's convinced she's keeping her mind active, but every one of those activities is something her brain has done 10,000 times already. None of it is asking her brain to build a single new connection. Busy is not the same as challenged, and that distinction turns out to matter a great deal. For your brain to start building new connections, you have to hand it problems it hasn't solved before. Ideally, things that feel a little awkward, that force several systems to coordinate at the same time. That is exactly what these exercises do, and it's exactly why they work. A few ground rules before we start. Each exercise gets at least 10 repetitions, and somewhere between 10 and 20 is the sweet spot. Go slow at first. The speed comes on its own as your brain learns the movement. That moment when you're learning a new movement pattern, a new sequence your hands haven't done before, that's when the new connections are actually forming. One say, movement becomes easy and automatic, your brain stops working at it. So the second something starts to feel smooth, make it a little harder. Speed it up or read something out loud while you do it. That keeps your brain on its toes. The first one is just a warm-up. Touch your index finger and thumb together to make a ring. Then slowly slide that ring up and down along your other fingers. Start slow, then pick up the pace. It looks almost too simple to matter, but it gets both halves of your brain firing at the same time. 10 to 20 of those. Second exercise, call it fist and palm. One hand lies flat, palm down on the table or your knee. The other hand is in a fist standing straight up on top of it. Now switch them at the same time. The flat hand becomes the fist becomes flat. Slow at first, then a little faster. Watch for clean switches because getting the positions exactly right matters more here than going fast. At least 10, 20 if you can. Third one, nose and ear. One hand grabs the tip of your nose, the other reaches across and grabs the opposite ear. Then you clap and switch, opposite hand to your nose, other hand to the other ear. It looks like a kid's game and honestly it is one. But there's real brain science underneath it. To pull it off, your brain has to hold your hand's current position in working memory while it's already setting up the next move. Cognitive neuroscience research has shown that switching between tasks like this lights up the prefrontal cortex, the region at the front of your brain that handles working memory and planning, and that region happens to be one of the first to take a hit when dementia sets in. 10 reps. Fourth, tap and rub. One hand pats the top of your head, the other rubs your belly in slow circles. Once you've got it, switch the hands. Clinicians who work in neurological rehabilitation lean on tasks a lot like this one. And here's the interesting part, that frustrating moment when two different movements just refuse to cooperate. Is the exact moment your brain is building new connections the hardest. So the struggle isn't a sign you're failing, it's the whole point. 10 on each side. Fifth exercise, goat and cow, and stay with me on the names. One hand makes a goat, index finger and pinky pointing out, the middle two fingers tucked down. The other hand makes a cow, thumb and pinky out, the rest tucked in. Now switch both at once. Slow first, then faster. And if you can talk out loud while you're doing it, count or just name things around the room. That's the ideal load. Because now your brain is running in several gears at the same time. 20 reps, sixth, salute and thumb. 1. Hand goes up to your temple like a military salute. The other hand makes a thumbs up pointing forward. Switch both together. 1, 2, 1, 2. Slow, then faster. 10 to 20. And the seventh is the hardest one, which also makes it the most effective. Take your thumb and touch it to each finger in turn. Pinky, ring, middle, index, then run it back the other way. Do it on one hand first. It should feel like a little wave rolling up and down your fingers. Then try both hands at the same time. Brain imaging. Studies have shown that this one exercise switches on more areas of your brain at once than almost anything else. The motor cortex that controls movement, the sensory cortex that handles touch, the cerebellum that fine-tunes your coordination, and the planning regions that line up a sequence of actions in the right order. Start slow. 10 on each hand, then bring them together. And here's what tends to happen when people stick with it. There's a well-documented arc to this kind of cognitive work. Someone like Carol picks up these exercises, fumbles badly the first week, feels a little silly doing them at the kitchen table, and almost quits. She doesn't. By the third week, the goat and cow switch that tied her hands in knots is starting to flow. That's not a trick. That's her brain doing the exact thing we've been talking about, building wiring that wasn't there before. Here's something worth knowing, and it leads me to a question for you. There's a pattern in all of this. The later in life you start working with exercises like these, the lower your starting cognitive reserve tends to be. Cognitive reserve is basically your brain's safety margin, the buffer that protects you from dementia, even when some of those changes are already quietly underway, and after the age of 50, that buffer starts thinning out noticeably faster than it did when you were younger. So tell me in the comments, how old are you? I ask because it genuinely shapes how I approach these topics, and knowing the age range of who's watching helps me make these videos more useful for you. So let's bring it home. Alzheimer's and dementia don't arrive out of nowhere. They build over years, which means you have years to push back against them. Your brain builds new connections when you give it unfamiliar problems to solve, and the 7 exercises you just learned are exactly that kind of problem. 15 minutes a few times a week, that's the whole ask. Give it a couple of months and a lot of people start noticing real shifts. Their thinking switches gears faster, their focus holds longer, their hands stop tripping over each other where they used to. Is this worth bringing up with a neurologist or your regular doctor? Absolutely, especially if memory slips, ongoing tiredness, or trouble concentrating are already on your radar. It might be the nudge you need to take a real look at your sleep, your stress, and whether inflammation is running high in your body. And one last thing, because it matters, everything I share here is meant to give you something to think about and good questions to bring to your own doctor. It's never a stand-in for advice built around your specific health. If this gave you something useful, leave a like and subscribe. That's how the channel keeps growing, and 300,000 subscribers is the target we're heading toward together. The checklist for these exercises is waiting on my Telegram, so just scan the code on your screen.